Hello, welcome to my top secret YouTube channel, which is very easy to keep top secret because it only has 2 people following it. But to those 2 people, love you guys. Happy Pride. It's not really Pride anymore, because apparently that's in June, even though nothing ever happens in June. Do you ever notice? Pride parades never seem to be in June, always July. So I'm saying that Pride Month is now July. And in the spirit of that, I'm going to rank some of the literary fiction that I have read in these months. It's a mix of things. A lot of them are books that have come out this summer, and they're books that I think you should be reading if you're looking to read more queer literature. How are we feeling about the hair? Gave myself a trim this morning. Took a pair of scissors to the hair, which just over here to trim some of the sidey bits. Not a great idea. Very hard to control when you just start going like bah, bah, bah. Also, the only mirror that I have in my room is the one in my wardrobe. Ooh, my hand looks so weird. So I was sort of like, you know what I mean? And yeah, not a huge success, but I'm hoping that it sort of settles. Sorry if you hear sounds through my windows. It's kind of warm still. And yeah, I apologise if you hear children frolicking happily in the garden outside, you know, not my garden. There aren't any kids in the garden. Okay, so number 1, I'm going to rank them worst to best. I thought it would be more negative to rank them best to worst, but it does mean that I'm coming into this like a real asshole. So, number 1, we've got Days of Light by Megan Hunter. Was my least favourite read of the last few months. It's described on the cover, and this is a pretty divisive cover quote. Think One Day, written by and starring Virginia Woolf. Crazy. I mean, one day because it follows a structure similarly of 5 different days in April. Yeah. Across 5 points of someone's life. Not necessarily every year, but like 5 different days in April across someone's entire lifespan. The other quote on the cover says that it's a vividly immersive delight. And this is the kind of cover that really does sell me as a litfic les. I think very cute. I actually found the review when I was looking around at what everyone else thought of this book after I finished it, and I was like, I found the rest of the review, which says, it's from The Guardian, darling, says, the early parts of the novel are a vividly immersive delight. As the years pass, though, the book loses some of its early momentum. Novels like David Nichols's One Day make it look easy, but a satisfying narrative that contains itself to only a handful of days is extremely hard to pull off. And so the reason that they say it's hard to pull off is that you have to fit in all of the context between the years into like flashbacks. And for me, it felt like a lot of the time, all of the activity of the book was kind of happening between these pages. I think David Nichols is that book, there is a kid outside who's going through it. Again, not in my garden. And that was something that I found before I saw that review, so I'm glad that other people had that experience with this book. I'll give you a little plot overview. Basically, it's 1938, and Ivy, our main character, is the kind of passive daughter of quite a wealthy family of artists. They're meant to be sort of an equivalent to the Bloomsbury Group. It has similar dynamics to the Bloomsbury Group with kind of like repressed sexuality, homosexuality, slight lavender marriage vibes. The first day in April that the book starts on is Easter Sunday, and Ivy's brother Joseph has introduced his girlfriend to the family, and I can probably spoil this because it's quite early on, it's in the first bit. Ivy and Joseph go for a swim on Easter Sunday, as is their tradition as brother and sister. There's some slightly strange descriptions where it's almost like she's kind of into him. It's a lot of like his kind of glistening body and how charismatic he is and how much she loves him, and he's so kind of like muscly, and I just feel like maybe Megan Hunter doesn't have a brother, you know what I mean? And when they get into the water at night, Ivy is distracted by a big blinding light in the sky, and she doesn't notice that Joseph drowns. So she thinks he's messing with her, and she's looking around for him. Doesn't show up. He's gone. So next day in April, funeral. Next one after that, moving on a little bit. And what happens slowly is that she's kind of becoming drawn towards his ex-girlfriend, and they're kind of bonding over the shared grief. I really do agree that the first part of this book, the first half, so that April, Easter Sunday, and then kind of like initial settling down, early 20s period is probably the strongest. War is an interesting part of this book. There's a great scene when she and Frances, her brother's girlfriend, are sat on the roof of her house. She's sort of settled down at this point, Ivy has, and they have their first kiss as a bomb is dropped on Cressington, the town that her family home is in. I thought that was a really good scene, and that works because it's another of these days and there's been a time jump, but it still feels like the action is very much happening in that day. It's not crammed into like flashbacks from in the between intervening years, you know what I mean? It gets less and less convincing as the time goes on, and Ivy's character stays passive and stays unformed. She's kind of an observer, but she doesn't really have her own character. She does a lot of reflecting on the fact that she is so passive, which is a really weird thing to read. Like you kind of think, oh, she was a quiet child and she's going to find herself and find what she wants to do, but she kind of doesn't. I think the fact that the cover compares her to Virginia Woolf, and then not only does it say one day written by and starring Virginia Woolf, it also says wonderful, luminous, channels Woolf and Mansfield and feels completely fresh, which I just think almost sets you up for failure as a writer, because then you go into it thinking, oh my god, this is going to be the most sort of sensitive, impressive writing, and they're just very big boots to fill. I don't think that any writer can accurately channel those voices because they were writing contemporary fiction of their time, and it's not a voice that you can kind of do an impression of, you know, because it's going to be inauthentic. It's always going to be inauthentic because it's become historical fiction. It's not a contemporary writer writing about the world around us in incredible vivid detail like Woolf and Mansfield were at the time. It's historical fiction. It gets that praise because it's written with so much vivid sensory detail, but it's kind of it misses, I think. I'll find you a little patch. So in this section, Ivy is reflecting on having become a mother. She says, Ivy did not feel like such a grown girl's mother, but what did she expect to feel like? She had expected solidity, she realised, a sense of being a wall that someone could lean against, but there was nothing solid about her. She was more like an unravelled ball of wool, she thought now, as she lifted her face to the breeze from the open window. She could almost feel them, the threads of her life that hung about her. It feels like Megan Hunter is sort of drawing attention to the fact that she is a vacant character, she's not solid, and trying to pass that off as her character trait, but actually she just feels unsolid because I don't think she's been kind of constructed in a huge amount of depth. At one point she's describing her daughter's room and she says, the books in their mute, stubborn rows, which I thought was one of those descriptions that you're just like, what does that really add? How is a row of books mute and stubborn? Like, I guess maybe it's like rigid, unmessy, mute. What does mute mean? You know what I mean? And I swear, I can't find it, but I swear there's a bit where she says that someone's shoulder blade was silent, or like strong and silent, sort of shoulder blade. I might have made that up, but that's kind of the voice that it's written with. It's like these sentences that sound impressive when you read them out in front of like a class of people, but actually they're kind of meaningless. It doesn't draw out the complexities of life in a way that you would imagine it would. I would say it's a pretty vacant book, and I found it really dissatisfying. And it, it had a nice romance plotline with the girlfriend, but then it's just, I think it's just let down by the form, by the fact that the pacing keeps on breaking. Because you construct a little passage of Ivy's life and then you cut and it's 3 years later and none of what's just been built up again is still true. She keeps shifting around and you just have no sense of this character. And I thought it was badly written. But then again, I couldn't write it. The next one is kind of in a similar vein, which is Summer Hours by Alessandra Thom. I definitely enjoyed reading this more. I found it gripped me in a way that that Days of Light didn't. It's set in 2018. It's only a kind of a novella, really. And it's, again, a monthly thing, but it's kind of like 4 months in across the summer in Edinburgh. And I read it because I was heading up to Edinburgh, and I read the whole book on the train up to Edinburgh, despite planning to read it all, like, while I was there to understand the streets, names and stuff. But that's kind of a sign that actually it was a fun book to read. I just felt like it didn't quite hit, possibly because of its length, actually. God, what a horrible description. It was a bit short for me. I think, honestly, I will read another book by Alessandra Thom, but I need more fleshing out of these characters and a little more sense of them. It's a quite simple plot. Essentially, it's a love triangle of 3 queer women. So Roisin, whose best friend Eve is staying with her, kind of in a rent-free situation, and there's this like early 20s spectre of money over the two of them, where Eve is kind of staying in this unspoken agreement where she's kind of paying her back with lots of drinks and food and things, and they're both completely broke. At which point Roisin gets a job with Eve's crush, who's called Claire, who's this very rich lady, and she starts working for Claire, and pretty immediately it becomes apparent that she's not really doing any work. She's basically making a website and then having sex with Claire is what she's being paid for. But she does seem to enjoy it, and she's sort of her girlfriend, but also she's still being paid a full-time wage to basically just be at her house. We really get very few scenes of that storyline between the two of them developing, and I kind of didn't get a huge grasp on Claire's personality, because that sounds sad as hell. Like, that sounds mega desperate from Claire. But in the first few bits of the book where they're setting her up as Eve's crush, you're like, oh, Claire sounds really cool. She's like kind of footchy, shortish blonde hair, kind of cool. And then she's sleeping with Roisin, and you're like, she sounds like a right loser. She's got no friends. She doesn't even really have a business that Roisin's working for. It all seems a bit like she's got no clients even though she's like a physiotherapist or something. Strange. Would have loved that to be developed a little more. I think a reason that some people didn't like this book was that all of the characters are pretty unlikable. Obviously, Roisin is doing something bad by keeping from Claire. Roisin is doing something bad by keeping from Eve the fact that she's sleeping with Claire. Because she knows that Eve is obsessed with Claire. Despite the fact that that's only really established by the fact that Alessandra thom has said she has a crush on Claire. So there's not really like, you don't see much like yearning. Sorry, classic, like where's the yearning? I didn't need yearning, I just needed a little more building up of that crush so that you could feel more like jeopardy about the fact that they might be discovered. It kind of culminates, this triangle, in a trip to Paris. Claire has a flat in Paris, which Roisin engineers so that she can basically go as like a friend's holiday with Eve without Claire, and then Claire joins, at which point Eve catches Claire and Roisin having sex in the bathroom, and then it's like shit hits the fan, you know what I mean? It's pretty like grimy, messy, deeply early 20s-y. Quite a lot of like, we're drinking warm wine in the bath, we're drunk all the time. There's a good quote where Eve says, it's best practice to be tipsy in warm weather so that you remember the summer in a haze rather than a stark white light. And it does sort of feel like that. The whole thing passes in like an alcoholic blur, which is why I read it in like one. And I would recommend, if you want to read it like that. I think my biggest complaint with it is just that I read it so quickly, kind of waiting for like a big moment of emotion or kind of like resolution, and I didn't really feel that there was one. The kind of friendship at the heart of the book is just irrevocably gone, and it's about grieving that relationship, but it didn't feel to me like it left the characters in a sort of changed position than when they started, which, if you're going to have like a character study of 3 people, I feel like it should, the focus should be some of them changing. I mean, we've got Roisin, we've got Claire, we've got Eve. Roisin doesn't change because she's made a mistake and she's just really depressed about it. Claire is barely developed because she's sort of just there as cool crush and then desperate loser. And then Eve, who you just feel bad for and who sort of disappears halfway through. So that, I think, is not like a bad story. I just think I just wanted like an ending of, I wanted like crazy. I wanted a bit more crazy. There were little sparks and pockets of crazy because you could kind of feel that that's what Alessandra thom maybe wants to write, is like the really like slightly weird girl, queer women going crazy at each other kind of thing, a little bit more dykey drama vibes. There was a great scene where they go up to the top of a hill for Beltane and they're watching the, I don't know if it's the sunrise or sunset, but they're all on psychedelics, and they kind of see like the figure of this hot girl who lives next door, like she's this goddess and like everything's swirly, and I thought that was really well written, and honestly it could be more of that. It could just be more of that. I would read another book by Alessandra thom, but sorry, it's flying in my room, but I just felt like it kind of left me feeling a bit unsatisfied. The next book in my ranking is this book, Sunstruck by Rayfet Hunter. This is actually different to the cover that I think people will see. This is just a little proof version. Ugh, gross. Sorry, I just really grossed myself out there. Now this, I'd initially put higher in my list, and since finishing it and thinking about it and reading a few other books, I actually don't think it was as fantastic as I thought it was. I don't even know if I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was a fun summer read, I would say so. It's very Saltburn-esque. If you've ever read some Alan Hollinghurst, it's got those themes, but not the kind of delicacy of the execution. It's similar themes because it's a working class person joining a very wealthy family. I mean, that is kind of what happens in all of Alan Hollinghurst's novels. But this is a debut novel. I think it's a very impressive debut novel, like, let's be clear. But it's not necessarily doing something hugely new in that field of like working class person meets super rich white people. It follows an unnamed main character, man, mixed race guy, student, who goes on holiday with his university friend, Lily, and joins her family in their French chateau. It's contemporary and feels very much like it kind of could have occurred around like early 2020s. It doesn't get named, but it feels like it could be around the time of the the initial BLM protests, which kind of is a backdrop to this book. The first half is all in this chateau in France. The second half is a time skip forward 6 months, I think, to the outcome of him becoming kind of enmeshed in this family. Obviously, this family who are welcoming this guy in can offer him so much. The mother is a musician and he would like to be a professional piano player. So it's this big promises. He's suddenly enmeshed in this family and they could change his life. But you kind of know, like, they're more powerful than him. If anything goes wrong, they're gonna take it all back. And when he gets into a relationship with the sexy son on this holiday, you kind of know that it's maybe a doomed relationship. But the first half, I, again, think was stronger. Like with this one. I think the first half that was all set around this French chateau was more more realistic than the second half when it's kind of meant to all get real. Something about the way it was written was just much more kind of visual. I really got a sense of the kind of beauty of the environment and the sensory and the booze and the kind of sounds of the pool and the glasses and the way that they kind of talk to each other, which is so like cringe inducing, and all their little nicknames for each other and their very wealthy traditions. Like they call there's a character who they call Dot or Dotty, and then they call Lily Magpie, and feels a bit tropey, I would say. They sound a bit like this. The rich family have a tendency towards being kind of stock characters a little bit, or kind of archetypal. The men are creepy, the girls are sort of outrageous, and Felix is smooth and suave, which works if it's just sort of a straight up holiday read, but it's kind of meant to really leave you with a sense of like, which I would say it does once you've finished it, but it doesn't have that reality that I think it would need to pack a really, really strong punch. I'm gonna refer back to The Guardian to really make those advanced critiques. So the characters in Lily and Felix milieu, this is why I don't write reviews like that. Who's saying milieu? Milieu? Alternate between blithe, jolly hockey sticks-esque a spirit. Alternate between blithe, jolly hockey sticks, esprit, and sociopathic coldness, and the descriptions of upper-class opulence have a similarly generic quality. A great many people and things glitter and glow. Clothes, drinks, and lovers are expensive, or expensive looking. Early on in Sunstruck, the narrator happens across the headless torso of an alabaster statue of Venus, the Roman goddess of love. Felix's mother had made it, and Felix had decapitated it in a fit of rage. A warning not to get in my son's way, she quips. Here is the novel in a microcosm, the on-the-nose metaphor, the sinister, hiding in plain sight menace, and our dozy, hapless hero too mesmerised to heed the signs. Something that I feel like hasn't been picked up on maybe enough, and I think could be an intentional choice from William Rayfet Hunter, is that the unnamed main character, that decision to have the character be unnamed, feels important when you consider how kind of vacant the main character is. Like, while this family have all these traditions and things and so much personality, even if it's like evil personality going on around him, he really is just kind of like, I mean, I almost found it slightly like, embarrassing the way that he kind of shrinks away from conversation, and he's very passive, but yet he seems to still attract the attention of the son and these friends. He feels a bit like he's observing his own life, but I guess that can be a character in its own way. Similar to Days of Light. I mean, it's hard to do, to create a main character that feels well-rounded, but still I thought he was kind of obscured by these big personalities around him and the money around him, which makes it hard to root for him when you then realise he's making all these mistakes. You're just like, come on, dude. He's hard to empathise with, which is strange because he's kind of meant to be like the viewer's sort of entry into this elite world. He's hard to empathise with because you're like, why are you spending time with these people? He has a great friend in it who is calling him back to reality and calling out the bullshit from this family, and is kind of directing him back to the protests and getting involved with more BLM activism. And he sort of ignores her, and yet she stays a friend of his, which I think is surprising. But for the class analysis and the writing style, I would say Alan Hollinghurst is better. But it's a debut novel. I mean, that's mean, isn't it? It's mean of me. I'm being cruel. Okay, next on the list, we have another little Sapphic Litvic situation, which is The Leveret by Anna Goldreich, who actually, when she came in to sign, I was chatting to her and I said, I love your pin. And look what she gave me. She's been making these little beaded pins. Wow, I'm such an influencer. And yeah, she gave me her pin that she was wearing, which I thought was so sweet. It does have heavier themes than the other Sapphic Litvic books, because it's actually fundamentally about a miscarriage. Has two narrators. The first is Claire, who is in a relationship with Phoebe, and Phoebe's passages are written in poetry, and then Claire's are written in prose. And I think that Claire's narration is possibly a bit stronger than Phoebe's. Phoebe's is quite disjointed in a kind of intentional, poetic, angry way, quite impassioned and fiery and concerned, and then Claire's is very downbeat, expressive prose. But the book begins with them moving into Phoebe's kind of childhood home, her, I think, Nan's cottage, and as a substitution to the miscarriage that she's experienced, Claire goes out into the woods. There's a slightly mystical, occult moment where she kind of crouches over the earth and bleeds into it and throws like hair and parts of her pregnancy into it, and then comes back and a tiny little baby hare has appeared, and she describes that through the pain, she's pulling this hair out of the earth. Through the pain, through the tearing, there is softness. My hand over her head, fingers spread out on a back. Her, pulling her up from the undergrowth, through the space I have opened for her, bringing her out to meet me. And then she licks this baby hair like she had done in the hospital. It's very tender. I don't necessarily like when people use that word about books because it's hard to kind of get a grasp of what that means. It might be a bit overused, I think, but I really do think it is, because it's kind of a quiet book. It's sad, but it's not wallowing and it's not heavy. It's kind of sad, but also light and also peaceful and natural. It's got a real lovely foundation in nature, and the two of them going out into the fields around the house in the countryside, because it's very remote and it has that spirit of the countryside being kind of peaceful and reflective. It's a bold move, I think, from Anna to open it with the two of them being at odds with each other. They're already fighting, kind of not openly, but at least implicitly within themselves. They're fighting each other. Claire doesn't like Phoebe for her kind of seemingly being unattractive, or she doesn't want to be intimate with Claire. And Phoebe doesn't like Claire because she has seen her kind of wither away into this depression, and she's slightly not attracted to her anymore. They have these really very real frustrations with each other, all mixed with the grief, but Claire specifically is feeling the grief, where Phoebe is rooted in like, I still need to work, I still need to take care of you. It's quite a it's probably a toxic relationship. People say that a lot, but Phoebe is out and about. Claire is just in the house, not seeing anyone else, kind of waiting for Phoebe to get back, until the hare comes along. And they call the hare Isla, which is what they were going to call the baby. And it really does enliven Claire again, but she's mainly only lively when it comes to Isla. She's sort of obsessed with this hare, who's growing and becoming a real animal, and in Phoebe's perspective is still quite a wild creature, and in Claire's is a loving kind of human substitute. I like that it doesn't ever really clarify which is true. You don't ever really know if it is sort of mystical that this hare has come to her or if it's not. You just get this sort of nervousness and like a real sense of unease that could become horror, and almost does a few times. I think maybe some people would like this to have gone more off the wall, but it has quite an ambiguous ending, just like it has quite a sort of ambiguous beginning with them disliking each other. It kind of ends with the suggestion that Claire is finding her wildness, and like deep, passionate, like rage against this grief, which can only be found, obviously, by letting Isla free. So I thought it was quite simple, but also quite effective, and it didn't have the most kind of like highly developed prose ever, but I don't think it needed to, and I think that might have spoiled it. It's the kind of book that stays with you, especially if you had that kind of experience. I feel like I'd be interested to hear how people connect with it. So going up in the rankings, to now top 3. So it's another book that came out in the last few months. Actually, just the paperback came out recently, and that is the original by Nell Stevens. Also historical fiction, also sapphic, this time with 2 main characters, one a sapphic character and one a man. And I will not specify, because I really think you should read this book. Especially if you like historical fiction, and if you like a mystery but aren't a big reader of mysteries, then I think this is probably a good one. That's what I am. Maybe I should get more into it, but It's kind of got a mystery sort of subplot, but it is still literary historical fiction. It's set in the turn of the 20th century, a bit like Days of Light. It's a rich family, but this time they are quite well developed, and it's got the kind of comedic relief that you would imagine from historical fiction. Like, they're big, larger than life, wealthy characters, but it's not kind of unbelievable. They're sort of just funny. It feels distanced enough from the period of history that you can kind of laugh at it. The main character is Grace, who's the daughter of the family, and I think where these other books have quite passive narrators and main characters, Grace is a real personality, and I love when you get a main character that's not afraid of being a bit strange, saying some weird thoughts. She has clear interests. She's really into painting. Her family don't see the kind of imaginative side of her. She's quite quiet around her family, but with us, she's very opinionated. And she is face blind, which is not something that you as a reader maybe have experience with, but you kind of have to take a bit of a leap. And it's interesting because also a book might be the main place that you could explore that. You know, in a film, you'd have to do the really tropey, like, blur of face, I don't know what this person looks like. In a book, you don't know what someone looks like, which obviously becomes complex when the family's long lost cousin comes back from 13 years apparent disappearance and apparent possible death, and no one's sure if he is the real cousin or not. And they turn to Grace, who was closest with Charles, and obviously because she's face blind, she can't tell them whether or not he is the cousin. Sometimes you really feel like he definitely is, and it's all this kind of big comedy that no one's really sure, because it comes down to money, because he would become an heir to all this money. And sometimes it's quite dark, the idea that they've welcomed someone in almost like a cuckoo whose grieving mother is obviously very ready to accept as her lost son, but everyone around them, the lawyers, for example, aren't sure. It's also, you know, pre-photography, so they're doing a lot of it based off paintings, and Grace is a painter, so she's a copyist. She's a good character because she's sort of stubborn and kind of wrong a lot of the time. She has bad opinions. She doesn't like people, often for no reason. And she really likes money. But she also doesn't like the wealth of her family in quite a kind of contrarian kid way. Because she's not sure if Charles is Charles. We're trying to figure it out. And it is the central mystery. It's a really well-paced story. It was very page-turny. I felt quite caught up in it, which is, I think, sometimes tricky for a piece of historical fiction. You have to make some sort of imaginative leaps to connect with these characters, but you do. It's one of those that has kind of stories within stories, and characters tell a tale, and then you switch perspective to that character. And I thought the central plot, which was not a romance by any means, was really great. It was kind of Shakespearean. It's almost slightly unbelievable, quite farcical, but it works. You know, people swapping identities, cousins, sort of undercover queerness. Yeah, it's a lot more of a plotty book than Nell Stevens' other book, which was briefly A Delicious Life, that book about the ghost falling in love with George Sand, Chopin's partner. But it was fun. It was really fun. And just like briefly A Delicious Life had a lot of gorgeous sort of allusions, this is full of references to paintings. So if you like to go and visit a painting, or wow, they're really screeching out there, or to kind of have a visual idea of things, it's nice. You can kind of just like, I did quite a lot of searching up of what a painting looked like and be like, oh yes. And then there's the subplot of Grace figuring herself out sexually, and it's all kind of written through this lens of copying and symmetry and painting and colours and lots of sort of vermilion, and gorgeously written. Great plot, great book, love. I've gone back and forth in my head about the top one because they're very different books. And one of them is really readable and fun and just was the best thing I read recently, and the other one came out a few years ago and is like lit fic at its best. I think I'm gonna put this one in second, which is A Language of Limbs by Dylin Hardcastle, which I have been recommending a lot to the lesbians in my life. It's the only one that I read recently that didn't come out this year or last year. It's still pretty new though. It's a story of two girls. I managed to read the entire book thinking they were the same girl in a sliding doors style alternative lifeline. And I actually think that was a great reading experience, and I'm not the only one who thought that until the very end, when no spoilers, when it becomes impossible that they would be separate. The two girls are called Limb 1 and Limb 2, and I think that's so gorgeous that these two who are kind of separate are actually part of the same body and must at some point become part of the same body again. It begins in the 1970s in a small town in Australia, where the two characters start out and they don't initially know each other, I think. Let me know if I missed that, because I was reading the whole thing thinking they were the same person. Limb 1 is caught by her parents sleeping with her girlfriend. Okay, really need to phrase that differently. Is caught by her parents while she is sleeping with her girlfriend, well, in the shed. And parents kick her out. Dad threatens to punch her. She runs out, hitches a ride to Sydney, upends her entire life, moves in with a house of queer people, lives through the AIDS crisis, works in the bars, has an incredible girlfriend, really, really passionate, beautiful writing, so like tactile, so devastating, urgent, another word that people use too often, but still. That plotline, that limb, is so emotional because it's so much laughter mingled with this like grief of the building grief of the AIDS crisis. So that's Limb 1, and then every other chapter is Limb 2, who I initially thought was her, but if she hadn't run away. And I thought that was pretty cool, and I think it still stands as a point. I thought it was awesome that the shift that the book considered was between being true to yourself and repressing yourself, rather than conventional life or rebellion. Because it could have been framed as, this is what I did because I couldn't step out of my bubble, but what if I had? But because it begins on that plot line with Limb 1, you see the alternative as conventionality. I think that's really cool, and I don't know if that's intentional, and I think that's made more complicated by the fact that they're different people, but still, it foregrounds that openly queer life rather than foregrounding the kind of closeted one. So Limb 2 is also in this hometown and has a crush on her best friend, and holds that crush and the rejection of that crush after a drunk night out within her for years as she settles down with a man, a writer. They have distinctly different voices. So limb 1 is poetic, limb 2 is a lot more passive. I say passive a lot, but you know what I mean? Just like a little less assertive, a little less impassioned. Which again I thought was because the character of yourself was dulled by being conventional, but maybe that is just limb 2's authentic voice. The main thing is that they kind of have weird little synchronicities between them as their lives develop, you know. There's a moment where one of them picks up a hagstone, possibly, in both paths. There are moments where they skirt across each other's lives. Limb 2 walks past a gallery that you know limb 1 is in, and you're like, AIDS also features in both of their lives. In limb 1's, it's everywhere and it's all of her friends and it's open and spoken about. In limb 2, it's her husband's father who dies in shame, and the main character of limb 2 knows that he was gay, but it's so repressed. And I mean, it was just so effective that they kind of skirt around each other and emotional. I mean, how can you, it always gets, it will always get you, so a plot line like that, when they're so close and they're not quite, you know, they're just round the corner. I mean, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. I won't spoil where it ends, because I think everyone should read it for its exploration of queerness and paths taken, and also not shaming either of them for the path that they've taken, actually showing that they experience the same amount of grief, or at least similar amounts of grief, similar patterns and love, despite one of them living kind of more authentically than the other. What a book. What a great book. Okay, number 1 is probably the biggest book of the minute, at least in my very niche bubble, which is Fruit Fly by Josh Silver. Now, having just been quite lyrical about Dylin Hardcastle's A Language of Limbs, I've got to say Fruit Fly, it was not making anyone cry. I mean, maybe actually it does have some quite serious moments, but the reason it's at the top of this list for me is because it was just like the most readable thing I've read in ages. I was truly hooked by it. I could not put it down. It's a big old book actually, and I read it in I'm actually quite a slow reader. I read it in about 3 days without sort of trying to, but just from every time I had a lunch break or anything in my work day, I was just like, I need to read this book. So in the time that I did have, which wasn't much time, I was like, it is about Mallory Maddox, a writer, a white rich writer who has written one bestseller when she was younger, and which compared her to Virginia Woolf. So I really hope that this is not a future for Megan Hunter. And then never wrote another successful novel. Her circle of people think that Virginia Woolf is a total fucking mood. They think she's really slay, the ladies around her, and that she's basically Mrs. Dalloway, which is a book that she hasn't read. And she basically has very intently curated her life and the way she presents to her husband, Ronan. Whereas internally, you know, she's sort of terrible. She's kind of evil. She's pretty insecure. Actually, the first time we meet her, she's like hiding in the bathroom of her own party playing Candy Crush, while her husband is like drunkenly flirting with her friends. But it's not like, oh, funny, look, I'm referencing contemporary things. It does feel real, feels quite real. I believe that there are people out there who are just like, I'm so slay. The gays love me is one of the things she says a lot. The gays love me, because she has a group of gay men who meet in the pub near her who once called her mother, probably as a joke. And she's really hung on to that. She's like, I am mother. It's awful. It's like so skin crawly. Ugh. And because she's obsessing about finding a new book to write, she goes on Reddit, as you would, and she finds a post that says, you can write a bestseller as long as it's gay and it's dark and it's sad. And so she thinks, where do I find gay men? She Googles, where do I find gay men? Obviously, the internet says, oh, Grindr. She's like, oh, Grindr, I've heard of Grindr. Interesting, I just want to research. She takes photos of her husband naked, and crops his bits out and his face out, and sets up herself on Grindr. And the interaction she has with people on there, again, skin crawling. She's like, yes, queen. And the people are like, you down? And she's like, yes, slay. It's awful. Anyway, through this, she gets invited to a tea party, which she thinks is this style, but actually it's Tina, which I think is meth. And see, this isn't my world. I guess I'm more Mallory, aren't I? That's unfortunate. And she meets an addict called Leo, who is himself kind of a fabricist. Is that a word? No. It's just come up with a lot of fabric shops. Fabulist. So because Leo is lying a lot, Mallory is then getting inspiration from his lies, which are really intended so that he takes pity on her and kind of like takes him to her house so that he can steal her money to buy more drugs and then do some more chemsex stuff. Actually, he's more about the drugs than he is about the sex. In many cases, he sort of has sex for the drugs. It's pretty intense, but it's also not like heavy. It's funny. That's the thing about it. It's just really like successfully funny. Like you like them both somehow, despite them both being pretty flawed and pretty exploitative of each other. I would say that, you know, his exploitation of her feels a lot more justified than her exploitation of him. But then in this interview with Dazed, Josh Silver says, well, the interviewer says, the ethics of writing from experience that isn't your own can be so muddy. Leo says he and Mallory are the same in that he wanted to steal her nice things and she steals his story. Do you think that they're the same? Josh Silver says, yes, that's what I think. There is a shared understanding in the patriarchal heteronormative system that we live in that where you feel shunned. I think it's the subconscious pain that straight women and gay men actually share that often makes us become very close friends and understand each other. The term fag hag or fruit fly, which has been used, is a bond between these two communities where we actually are sharing in an understanding of what it's like to live in a world that is stacked against us. And that's the thing is, you don't even really notice it, but you get halfway through the book and you're like, shit, I feel bad for Mallory. She's got this very restrictive, controlling husband, and functionally she just wants to write another story, but she is doing it in the wrong way. And actually, the way she justifies this book to her agent is that she's exploring the story of her brother who died by suicide. And you only see that in the emails that she's sending to the agent. The rest of it is clearly she's taking Leo's story. To the agent, she's saying she's exploring her own experience, her own trauma, her brother's death. And subconsciously, I think she is. She's sort of just using this initial interaction with Leo as like a kind of distraction and an easy route to do it, to process her own trauma. it's very frustrating and it's very tense, and I was reading on my lunch break a lot and struggling to like snap out of it because I was getting so like this. I wouldn't be able to like get back into like chill bookseller mode. Josh Silver is very good because he has initially done YA writing. I think he didn't necessarily pitch it as a YA book, but it's got like because it's a bit dark, it's got the dark themes, but he's got the kind of pacing of a YA book. It really keeps you like, it's very story led and yet really great at developing character. I think it does it through humor, honestly. I think really good writers can just make you feel for people because of that, because of the humor in their writing. It's such an interesting type of humor as well, because it's kind of like the unself-awareness of her character. It's a bit of like a joke from Josh Silver to you about Mallory. She does a lot of saying like, God, this is so interesting, when she watches groups of gay men and she sees like the addiction and the homelessness that's going on in this community that she's watching. She'll be like, oh, it's so fascinating, just so inappropriate, you know? She's kind of delighted in it, about it, because it's so much juice for her story. So like, for example, at one point she's meeting him in a cafe and she's planned it all out. She's got this connection with him. He kind of knows more about her than she thinks he does, but still. The Cuckoo Cafe does not have an intimidating atmosphere. Once you're through the gift shop, it opens up into a large cafe with lots of tables and open spaces, and from what I know of Leo, having followed him around for the last 2 weeks, I know he likes open spaces. He seems to like being outside. There are lots of pot plants in here, hanging baskets. Like, girl, he's outside because he's homeless. It's like evil. It's evil. At one point he calls her his fag hag. She says, fag hag, I'm not complaining. If that's what he wants to call me, I'm fine with it. In fact, I would never say this out loud, but it makes me feel a bit like a Spice Girl. Fag hag Spice. They always needed a sixth member whose trademark was being progressive and socially aware. But the most impressive thing about it is that the characters don't stay two-dimensional. Leo is not only a victim, he's lied about the circumstances of his homelessness. He doesn't take the responsibility that he should for his life in some places, just like Mallory doesn't. But then there's also like such a sense of kind of forgiveness from you to her. I kind of didn't love the ending like 100%. You really just have to read it, because I'm not going to spoil that. But I see what he was doing by trying to kind of put the power and ownership of the story back into Leo's hands. But I don't know if I love the ending where he maybe kills her. Up for debate. It's a great story, and I'm not going to spoil actually any of the plot points. And I don't think I have. Beyond the point that they connect with each other, it just spirals like crazy, and it's really well plotted and really tense, and a great read. So definitely those top two are my hot wrecks for your summer reading. I really think they will improve your life, and they might stress you out and make you cry, but I think you need it. You person watching this so far into this video. I have plans for what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to do a little review of some queer classics for you. For example, Giovanni's Room. For example, Jeanette Winterson, etc. And then I'm going to talk to you about some non-fiction, because I've been missing my histories. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I wonder if you like this format. I think it's fun to have a little ranking system. Thank you to my lovely two. I hope you too have fun. Maybe you'll meet one day, you two, out there in the world. Okay, right, I'm gonna stop rambling. Love you lots. Bye.